stranger to the observer. Let me say a pleasant Sunday evening to political scientist Dr. Indira Rampersad. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, good evening, Mikee K.
Yeah,
How are
always
you?
good to hear your voice. Thank you so much for taking time out this evening to join me here on the program. First thing first, waking up this morning, Prime Minister reassigns ministerial duties, sweeping reassignment of ministerial responsibilities, and that of course took place with the President, Christine Carla Kangaloo, on the advice of the Prime Minister, with major changes affecting the portfolios for Homeland Security and public utilities. 6 months. You think there was some assessments made there after the first 2 quarters?
Well, I think that they tried it out. I think the Attorney General and Minister Padarat's been very busy, public utilities. So that may account for the change because of the overload on these two ministers. She sought to redistribute a bit so that it can even it out. So I think that was the rationale behind it. And yes, there would have been some assessments to determine this. Maybe the ministers themselves explained that it was too heavy.
Yeah. I mean, coming back, I guess you've had time to think it over, look over things, evaluate what was going on, and said, listen, I want the core concentration of certain things in the ministries to be looked at. And she herself has taken up some responsibilities.
Yes, more for herself. So I hope that she would be able to manage them because she herself already has a very, very heavy load, as prime ministers often do, because the buck stops with them, and ultimately a lot of issues from the various ministries sometimes go for discussion and support or approval from the prime minister.
Yeah, which really is true. I mean, when you look at it, it's quite a lot of work, But we wait and see, and I guess these things will happen, as she's made it quite clear that whatever changes need to take place, it will take place to benefit, of course, the delivery of service to the citizenry. In the backdrop of all of this, I know you weighed in on the fact that Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela, the relations can be repaired. Do you believe that it hasn't gone to the point where there's no return? There's basically that there's still room for, let's say, if there's any reconciliation or anything that needs to take place?
Well, just to retract a bit, the prime minister had never attacked Venezuela. She had attacked the narco traffickers and the war on drugs. And that was the alignment with the U.S. That fight was a reason for the alignment, the strong alignment with the U.S. Because most of us analysts always say that you have to get international and regional stakeholders in this fight. And, even the crime report we did in 2013, we made that recommendation. The United States is a major international stakeholder, major player. And they are the recipient of a lot of these drugs which are transshipped from the Caribbean. So I think it was natural to turn to the superpower for assistance in this fight. And she is not backing down from that. She's not retracting on that. What she's now made it clear, which I think were a matter of concern for regional analysts and some leaders, is the idea of regime change in Venezuela and whether Trinidad was going to be a party to that with the U.S. I do not know if that is the U.S. agenda, but certainly Persad-Bissessar has made it clear that regime change is not her agenda. It's all about the criminals and narco trafficking.
Yeah, she has made that perfectly clear. She's not dealing with anything as far as what's involved in a sovereign state, but she is, of course, concerned, and she's happy for the assistance to deal with narco traffickers. And I think somewhere between there, that entire message was lost. And would you say that perhaps there were a few mischief makers that wanted to take that narrative to the point that she was just fully backing whatever was being done by the U.S. rather than looking and listening to exactly what she was saying and what she was supporting?
Well, the more sensational the news, the better it sells. So, as a journalist yourself, you would understand that. And yes, I think the message was being lost that it is about the criminals, it is about the narco traffickers, and it is not about moving the president of Venezuela. I don't think Trinidad can do that anyway. And she never said she was going to be complicit with that. However, she did say she would support Guyana if Venezuela should display aggression against Guyana with respect to the Essequibo. And this is in keeping with CARICOM. The whole of CARICOM has taken that position. CARICOM has made some statements to that effect. With regard to whether it's repairable, well, I don't think the relationship was damaged. I think it was misconstrued. The narrative was misconstrued. The way that information was being spread and distorted, I think that pinpointed to some rift between Trinidad and Venezuela. The Venezuelan minister made some statements which were not flattering, but Persad-Bissessar, our prime minister, had never attacked Venezuela. She had attacked the war on narco trafficking, and Venezuela itself is a transshipment point for some of that drugs coming further from South America. So I think, they say all is not lost in love and war. And we have had a history of diplomatic relations, peaceful relations with Venezuela, which is probably our closest neighbor. We can literally see the shores of Venezuela from Cedros, southwest Trinidad. So her ministers have indicated, Minister Mundal at any rate, that he is prepared to go wherever there is need in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. He's prepared to go Caracas. He mentioned Houston, he mentioned Caracas. And Persad-Bissessar said, the ministers will go first and she will go after if necessary. So there are overtures, certainly there are overtures. It's never too late, there's always room for dialogue, discourse, and diplomacy. And I think they can work this out in the interest of both states. I believe that whatever the Dragon Gas deal brings, it's going to bear fruit. It's going to be fruitful for both Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago. I don't see why any state would want to sign an agreement that is not beneficial to them. So it is expected that it should be mutually beneficial to both Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago. But what I would call for, which I was calling for before under the previous regime, is that I think there needs to be some level of transparency on what exactly is in that agreement, because we never knew, and there maybe need to revise what is in there that was signed by the previous PNM administration.
Well, I agree with you 100%, and I'm sure people who are locked on listening, they agree. I mean, this was something that was definitely done in the dark. We didn't know the details of it. We didn't know the logistics. And maybe a lot that's playing out here as far as the narrative being a bit skewed could be folks who may not want the real, or should I say, the truth to come out on this entire deal that was signed. So I guess that's something we have to look at. And I think the Prime Minister is playing it pretty well, very calm and saying, listen, the ministers go first and she goes after. And that says quite a lot. And she made it quite clear that they will work out the details and they will share it with the general public. So I guess this is something that we would be open to, and there will be transparency. And how important is that? I mean, is transparency beneficial not just for us, but perhaps for the U.S. as well?
Well, it's critical, and we have to keep in mind that I think she persuaded the U.S. to reinstate the OFAC license, and which would facilitate this Dragon deal, because without that, we couldn't go forward. There was a sort of embargo on Venezuela and trading with Venezuela. So it seems that the U.S. is facilitating the whole process between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. Ultimately, the U.S. itself might benefit. But certainly all three parties and the rest of Latin America and the Caribbean would also benefit from the war on crime, on criminals, and narco trafficking. I mean, that scourge that is plaguing Latin America and the Caribbean and the United States and even Europe, because the drugs are going there. They are the demand side. The supply side is South America, the transshipment point are us and the Caribbean. So I think there is a lot of room for maneuvering. There is more than wiggle room here. There is, many nations have broken diplomatic ties and then reinstated. A lot of the Caribbean countries have broken diplomatic ties with Cuba. when it had initially gone to communism, and then they re-engaged Cuba. So we didn't even break diplomatic ties with Venezuela. So therefore, there is a lot of room for dialogue and discussion here, and I think she's on the right path in reaching out to Venezuela and in trying to reinstate a dragon gas deal. Well, the agreement is there, but we have to make sure that is beneficial to the population. So we would like to know, and the government's been pretty transparent so far, so I expect they would let the population know what exactly is in that agreement.
Yeah, but based on your expertise, I mean, this is your field as far as geopolitics and what have you. I mean, just how tricky is this? Because I mean, every player here would have terms and conditions. I mean, the Trinidad and Tobago would have our terms and conditions. The U.S. and then of course you have Venezuela who would say, listen, we don't mind, but we want to be, we want to make sure that you're not going to have anything set up that's going to make it easy to have the U.S. on your soil, to have easy access to us. And a lot of things are going to play out as far as the request by all parties involved. How tricky is this?
Well, it would have been easier to tell you this if I knew the contents of the original agreement that was signed, what were the stipulated clauses therein between Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago under the former regime. Remember, that was a signed agreement, and successive administrations tend to inherit the contractual arrangements of previous administrations. So this is where the negotiation and diplomacy comes in. Have a negotiation, so she has to get her best negotiators forward. I know this because I'm a union leader and I know how heavy we have to negotiate to get what we want. So she will have to get a team of really seasoned and qualified negotiators to go forward. They would have to look at that agreement. I'm sure they've looked at it already. They would have to determine which clause is not to the benefit and the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, our nation. They would have to see if there is a need to revise any stipulated clauses therein, whether they want to keep it as it is, whether they want a completely new agreement, or whether they can rework the existing one. So it's negotiations is always you always have to be very careful and very subtle, very diplomatic, and very you have to put your best foot forward and your best negotiators forward. But it's not impossible. We have signed so many agreements over history. All the decades we have been signing international and regional agreements. So Mikee K, this is not impossible. We have signed energy agreements before. And this administration, some of the players were in government before. Minister Munilal, for example, I think he's on the show today.
Yes, he's later on, yeah.
Yeah, Minister Munilal he's a seasoned minister of government. They are qualified. They're qualified to deal with it. She has a brilliant battery of lawyers behind her, of attorneys at law. And so I think this government is up to the task of dealing with Venezuela. It's not impossible. Not impossible at all. And we have worked through more difficult situations.
And what do you say to folks who would make the statement that, listen, but the PNM had things going with that same deal. What makes this one different?
Well, what they will say that, but do we know what was in the deal? We don't know. And that deal had come under attack, and I think largely because people did not know what was in it. We keep hearing about a dragon gas deal, and we didn't know what was in it. So this is why I keep saying the transparency is critical. And, there are other things from the PNM that the government has inherited. And they have to continue. For example, we got negotiations which was settled under the previous administration. And this government settled it. So they couldn't change anything. It was a contractual arrangement. But there is more room for these international agreements with a change of government. And what you have to tell people is the needs of the population come first and foremost. Crime, the campaign on crime, people were leaving in droves, people were dying, by the thousands. They had to deal with it. They have to deal with it. If it entails getting rid of the narco traffickers, we will have to do that. If it entails establishing relations with other states, inviting other states to assist us to fight this war on narco trafficking and crime, we will have to do that. If our economy, this is another issue they campaign on, the economy, it was crime and the economy primarily. If our economy is in a mess because we're not producing oil and gas as we used to, we're not refining any as we used to, and we have to strike agreements with other states which can benefit the people of Trinidad and Tobago, then we have to do that. So it's all in the interest of our country, and I think this is uppermost and foremost in the mind of the Prime Minister and her government, that is what they have to do. They have to do what they have to do for the survivability of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
I agree. On her return last Wednesday, she did say to reporters that the budget will be soon. She expects that to be soon. She said that they were working on the budget whilst in Washington. Says the Minister of Finance, Minister of Planning, all of the members that went with her, because they all have ministries. Time, the issue here, of course, is not a matter of time. It has to come. The budget has to be delivered. But do you think that it's things that seem to be changing ever so often that has to be added, and why it might be taking so long?
I think it's because they are engaging a lot of stakeholders in how to meet the demands of the economy. Because we have problems, we have serious financial problems, and they've been saying it, the state of the treasury as they found it, they have to go far and wide to seek assistance, grants and loans. We saw Kuwait on board, we see Dubai on board, we see India on board, and they will continue to reach our regional and international counterparts and even the international and regional financial institutions, the IADB, World Bank, IMF, if they have to. So I think that they have been engaging these stakeholders, and that is no secret. When she went to the U.S., to the UN Heads of Government Summit there, she did meet the leaders of Kuwait and Dubai and sign agreements. She did invite Prime Minister Modi here and had some agreements. So I think it's reaching out, trying to see. You see, budget is a statement of income and expenditure.
Yeah.
And we would have to include the income, or whether it's a kind or cash, from these stakeholders that have been coming forward. And they have been doing remarkably well. She's been doing remarkably well in reaching out to these leaders who have been coming forward to assist us. All of that would have to be included in the budget, in addition to some other overtures they may be making, including overtures with energy. So the budget has to come, and it has to come soon. But I also think that the priority will be, I always say all politics is domestic. Ultimately, it's your constituency, your nationals that you have to appease first and foremost. That they're going to settle they're going to deal with the outstanding trade union negotiation settlement, particularly for the OWTU and the PSA.
Yeah, that's very important. I need to get to this now. There are some countries, CARICOM countries, who have thrown open their borders for free movement of each other's citizens. Now, you weighed in on this, and you said that the initiative was legitimate under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas and should be seen in the spirit of regional integration. But you caution that unfettered movement carried risk for this country.
Yes, and I realize that some people didn't understand because I've been looking at some posts.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Yes, of what exactly is going on. So, yes, so we already have something in place for skilled nationals to move across the region. We have Articles 45 and 46. One deals with skilled nationals, and one deals with you're just moving for a holiday or vacation, you're just moving across. So the one with skilled nationals cover a range of occupations, of professions, university graduates, university lecturers, artists, journalists, a whole host of them are listed there in the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. The other, where you can just move, you can just move to visit friends, family as a tourist, to stay. That one I think might be more problematic and more of a challenge, because if you allow unfettered movement into a country for that, especially a country that is doing better than its counterparts in the
Yeah.
region, you're going to find the less developed countries coming to the more developed countries, and the more developed countries having the burden of resources. We're talking about water, electricity, housing, schools for the children. And this is why the whole integration project, the regional integration project, which was envisioned since the Federation and through CARIFTA and CARICOM and now the CSME, has been somewhat stalled, not going full hog because of these uneven levels of development of the countries in the region, and because the wealthier countries, the more developed, I should put it that way, the MDCs, tend to suffer disadvantage in having to deal with an influx from the LDCs, the less developed countries. But Trinidad and Tobago also have the added problem of the Venezuelan migrants.
That's
And
true.
I think we have hundreds of thousands in this country. I mean, the official statistics are, vary, and we don't know. We don't get official statistics on this migration because much of it is illegal. So it's very difficult to get that statistics. But we know every turn we make is hablando español. We see these Venezuelan nationals around the country. Now they are contributing in terms of labor to the economy, but at the same time, they're having challenges. Getting adequate housing, getting their children into schools, and all that. So, mass migration, unfettered movement, while it bodes well for regional integration, it is a positive thing generally. Europe has done it quite successfully through the European Union, and they have gone the added length of having a single European currency in the euro. But mind you, even the United Kingdom did not join on to that euro, neither did Scotland. They still have the UK. And so in the Caribbean, we have the Eastern Caribbean dollar, but the rest of the countries, we have not managed to have a common regional currency. Because of that very, very fact of the uneven nature of the levels of development in the region of different countries. So Mikee K, it's more easily said than done. And what's been happening, they've been talking about this unfettered movement. Because right now, any national can come for 6 months. Okay, six months hassle-free travel. But they want to remove that 6 months to indefinite. And I see some countries objecting, may have an objection, because it's only 4 countries in that recent cooperation initiative there. I think it is Barbados and Suriname.
Dominica, Belize, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Right. So, yes, but the rest haven't jumped on the bandwagon because they are assessing the situation and the pros and cons for themselves.
Yeah, so you're saying it's all good in spirit, but there need to be some factors that we need to look at very seriously. And I agree with you. Any closing comments? Because I want us to have a long interview after the budget is read, so we're just pacing ourselves. Any closing comments? Go right ahead, please.
So what I would say as a closing comment is that I did say all politics is domestic. Leaders have to be pragmatic. Sometimes they have to take decisions that are unpopular. Sometimes they have to make an about turn. Sometimes they have to prioritize and reprioritize. Sometimes they have to revisit and revise. It's not linear. It's not always linear. It's not always a straight line. Okay, it's twists and turns. Ultimately, if you're a leader that's trying to meet the needs of your people, you are going to have to do this. It's shenanigans. You're going to have to make these shenanigans. Sometimes you get criticized for it. Sometimes you get praised for it. But your back has to be broad to be able to take all of it.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much.
The Observer.